Hello, YouTube. I had a guy asking me about the ADA 828, and he said, I want this for my bass amp. I'm going to get a 2050, and I'm going to get the AD8 828. Well, I'm here to tell you that this here is what you want for your preamp. You do not want the ADA 828, which is that's line level. It's um, this has a high impedance, meaning the, the jack on your bass guitar, the pickups are a different impedance than what the ADA 828 is looking to see. Okay, this board here, you do not need to uh, modify anything. It comes with this cable here, okay, and back here you'll see it says uh, VCC plus ground VCC. Basically, that what this means is this cable here has three wires. Okay, so one of them is the power input, and it will run off of 9 volts. It says 12 volts. This if you look at other auctions, it says 12 to 24. I tested it at 9. It ran at 7.5 volts, but ideally you would run this off of 12. Um, this is the preamp you want. Like I said, there's three wires here. One of them is the signal input. One of them is a ground, and that'll be for your power supply, and your signal input will share that ground. And then, so it's three wires: power input, ground, and signal input, and that plugs into this little jack here. So they don't give you when the place I bought it, they didn't include the nut and the washer. So make sure the place that you order it from, it says, yeah, see, package board with wires. You might not get that stuff. I didn't get it with mine. And here they show you the pinout. Now, as far as you had wrote to me about your plans to use a 2050. I've been down that road before. I think that you're I don't buy the 2050, dude. Come on, man. Spend a little bit more money. When we're looking at bass amps, Mono Class D amp board. They just redesigned the mono boards, and I was looking at them yesterday. I saw this new board, and I said out loud, man, that would make a perfect board for an amp. The only thing, it's not as affordable. Like, okay, this one here, this is 15. See, it's not mono. Um, 150 watt Class D sub board. This board, oh, here it is. This is the one you want to get, buddy. Okay. Uh, this okay, where it says here subwoofer gain, that's not subwoofer gain, that's frequency. Okay. This sums to mono, so it takes a stereo output, uh, two channel input, excuse me, and sums to mono. But like if it were me doing this, you go in here with a snips and you cut these off here. There's three connections for this, okay? You cut these off and you remove this blue part that says 103 and you get a 5 kb audio taper pot or linear taper pot potentiometer, and then you solder the wires in there, and it'll be, looking at it from here, it'll be, this will be leg 1, this will be leg 2, and that'll be leg 3. That's how you solder that together. Okay, and then you could do that for this one too. You get another, if it does it say 103 here? I don't know, I'm not looking. It might be a 104. So you'll have to figure out the pot code for that. So for that, like I would go, okay, when you get it, let's say it says 104. I can't really see. And then I'm going to go pot, 104 pot. And it's going to say, oh, it's a humana. It'll tell you the value of it. A 104 is 100K. A 105 is a 1 meg. 102 is 1K. 103 is 10. Okay, so you'll need, for that, for this pot, it says 103. That's a 10K pot. Okay, and it comes with the heat sinks already. It gives you a diagram. Like here's your battery here. Here's your audio input, and you can solder in on the bottom of this connector if it doesn't come with a connector. Just solder two wire ground, and then coming from your preamp. Okay, so coming out of that preamp, that little wire they give you, that clippy wire. You're gonna maybe cut one of those wires off and run one to your power supply. But then you could just clip that clip right into here, or cut those wires and solder it up. And if you want to get more out of it, you could bridge the other side of this. You could bridge these two, solder these two together. Because see, this is the ground, and then there's two channels. You see this chip here? This is they're summing mono. We're taking two channels and combining them into one. You see how there's only one output for your speaker? I'm telling you, dude, this is the chip that you want. It has these. Okay, this switch, this would be the only thing. You would need to really carefully unsolder this and then buy a switch that replicates whatever the connections on the bottom of the board are for that switch, and have that on your panel. That's a bass boost switch, which is perfect for your project. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Here's the power connector, so it's in between the potentiometers, which are, where are they? Here. Looks like they're here. Here's the potentiometers. So this goofy switch, there's probably two connections that are not really doing anything. I'm not sure. It's probably just a toggle. It's probably a DPT toggle. So you do need to remove that. Like what you would need to do is play with your multimeter on a continuity and go through all of these, whatever is connected to that switch. This switch, you need to replicate. What you could do if you carefully unsolder that, connect your meter, or you'll end up with having to manually switch this on the inside of your amp. You may like that may be your safer route if you're not good with electronics. You may have to just leave it that way. Where if like you could drill a hole in the top of the chassis and have it where you could put a stick in it, a little screwdriver, and flick that switch yourself. Like that's what I would do. But the other way to do it is you take a look at this here, and probably these two. See this. You know what? This is the other leg of the pot. This is from the trim pot. Okay, so where are we here? This is the other leg of the trim pot. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 minus 2 is 4, is it? 1. Man, I wish they wouldn't put their... It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So probably more than likely, these two outer connections don't do anything for the circuit. They're just metal, the metal tabs, just a grounding, shielding of this switch. And then the inside of that switch, and like you could do some testing with I see I really would need to see the schematic of this to see if you could have both of those pins shorted. But the only hang up with that board is that bass boost switch is just like I'm guessing a regular single pole single throw toggle switch. The pin out for that is it's just 3 lugs. So if you were to remove these and pull that switch out, like basically you put your soldering iron in each one of these pins and apply paste flux, and then apply solder to them, your own solder, and then use a desoldering braid or a desolder sucker tool, a little plunger vacuum tool, and you pull the solder off all this and clean it up real nice. Then go over it with the desoldering braid and touch it up and make sure all the solder's gone off here. Real carefully and slowly, and taking time in between each application of the iron to let it cool. And then you yank that switch out of there. What you'll find is what's going on with that switch is probably only the middle 3 pins. That when you throw the switch one way, these 2 pins are connected, and when you throw the other, these 2 pins are connected. And that's a regular SPST toggle, okay? An SPST toggle switch, it looks like this. And it has, you can see it has 3 pins. So you would solder a wire on each one of these, and then that would end up going back to these 3 pins in the middle of this here. And then that would duplicate this goofy panel switch. This is the only tricky part about making this amp is, and like one way to, you would want to bolt this down, you would set this down and make marks, and then drill it out and have spacers. You could cut a pen, sections of a pen. You just need some hardware, some bolts from the hardware store. Or you could be fancy and use standoffs. I do it both ways. You can buy the standoffs. These things. You can get a kit of standoffs, and whenever you get them, you're going to want to make sure they come with the fasteners. But like here. This would work. You know, this comes with the standoffs. Now, also, you're going to want, you should really fuse it. You know, like I would say a 5 amp or a 10 amp fuse. 5 amp or 10, probably 10 amp for the power amp. And with this amp, you can use a like a laptop, not like 19 volts, 5 amp power supply. If you have an old laptop power supply, you could power this. The only thing is your oh well no your JFET preamp will run off 24 volts. So Bob's your uncle. There you go. You have you know you buy a set. You buy some of those toggle switches that I showed you, and but yeah, this is the board you're going to want to get, and then you could get everything on Ali. Like I said, it's a 104. I think it's a 104 and a 103. Let's see. 10 KB pot. Okay, so here you're going to need some of these to mount this. 10K. You'll need a 10K, and then you'll probably need a 100K for the other side of it. And what was I looking at here? Designing an amp for a. You're not going to want to run this or apply power to it unless a speaker is connected to it. And you can't ground the output of this board cannot share a common ground. That means you need a plastic output jack. You can't use a grounding jack. Okay, so 6.35 female. These plastic ones, like this one will not ground. This one up in the corner. These ones, but the typical, the old style ones that are metal, they will ground to the chassis, and that'll cause this amp board to not function. So you can't have a chassis ground. This minus here has to be isolated from the power grounding and the input grounding. On a Class D amp, it's different than the older style amps where that's supposed to be the same ground. You can't do that with Class D, okay? That's the only caveat that you're going to be looking at. But yeah, heavy bass tone like this, I don't want to scare you off about this switch. Really, I would say just leave, and again, you don't even have to, you could leave these on the board too. If you drill holes in this thing, or however you build it, like you could just have this sitting out on top, screw it to a board. And as long as you were careful with it, you know. But this here is going to be your master volume. Like how I would do it is cut these off with the snips. Get in there and just cut it, and then apply the soldering on the bottom, and then use a needle nose pliers and pull these pins out from the top, and then clean it up with the desoldering braid. Okay, that's another thing you're going to want to get. this stuff. And then you're going to need, this is the most important thing, is to get the paste flux. Don't screw around. Get this right here. That's what you want. And use that. You take a pin, a PIN pin, and you apply that every time you solder. You apply that with that pin every time, and you'll be a happy man. Just you have a fan going, blowing on top of the board to blow the smoke away. Because when you're using that extra flux, there'll be a little bit of more extra vapor. Okay, but it makes the soldering day and night easier to do. Okay, pal. Now, like you see here, you continue your wires and put them in here and screw them in. I always just solder them to the bottom. I don't use those connectors. I prefer a hard solder connection than something that's gonna just pop out one day for no reason. But yeah, you don't have to. The only thing about not turning this down is if everything is turned up and you're only using your input preamp, you'll hear some hiss out of your speaker. Me, if it's got knobs on it, I'm gonna want to tweak it. I'm gonna always want to adjust. But you could just set all this with a screwdriver to your preference and leave it internally, or on the top of the chassis, drill 3 holes. Drill a hole here, drill a hole in the middle, and have a hole over here. And then you would drop a precision screwdriver down. And let's see if I can. Yeah, okay. Looks like they're both 103s. So you would only need to order the one value potentiometer if you were gonna replace these, like I said. But and where you're reading 150 here, that's only if it's at 24 volts and like 2 ohms or something. It's not gonna, this isn't gonna be too loud. If you're thinking, oh, this is too loud, it's not. This is not. This is the only amp board you should be thinking about making for a bass amp. If anything else, and you're a huge loser, okay? And you need to do 24 volts. Don't do 12. Don't do it. You'll regret it. Trust me. Now, you need 18650 sleds. You'll need these. These are the batteries you need to power it. And you buy a sled, which what I usually do is I'll have a 18650 holder. I will have a small, thin, like a 1/4-inch plywood board, and you'll cut it the same size as this, and then there's screw holes in here. There's screw holes, so you get these tiny screws. You can order those screws on here too. And then you wire this up. You solder a wire in here, a wire in here, and then a wire in here. And then you'll have like, let's see, yeah. Okay, here, I'm gonna print screen this. And so here's what you would do. You start here with the positive. You pop the first battery in. Well, this is actually upside down. We're gonna I'm gonna turn this around. He's running this in a different configuration. You're gonna need to you're going to need to well just bear with me here. Screenshot one. You're going to need to flip-flop these batteries in order to make this power pack. They can't be run all going the same way like they had in that picture. So I'm going to show you exactly how you would do this, make this power pack to power the amp. And this is what you're going to need to do it, okay? And you do it this way, you'll have to manually pull the batteries out to charge them. So you might want to put this on the outside of your amplifier. Okay, so this is how you'll do it. Okay, so you need thick wire. You need wire that you cut off of an AC cable or wire that you got out of a computer power supply. Okay, buddy? Thick wire. And we'll use yellow wire today. That's a little bit too thick. So in order to make the power pack, we're gonna have our wire be red, okay? Or you know what? We'll have the wire be black, okay? So in order to make your power pack, you're gonna need to wire it up like this. There's little tabs on the bottom here, and you bend those out. So you'll solder one wire here, and you'll solder another wire in between these two. And you could just assume put your fuse here. You want to put your fuse there, that's one way of doing it. But yeah, and then this here would become your ground, okay? And this here would be your hot side. So what I do is I get red and green nail polish, and I'll put on this plastic tray, I'll put a little dot of red here, I'll put another little dot of red here, I put dots in here and let that dry so I don't ever get confused about reinstalling the batteries and put them in backwards, okay? But then your positive wire, here's your negative wire, and here's your positive wire, okay? And then you could put your fuse like right here or right here. But then that would go, you would take your ground and split it. You take this cable and split it into two wires, and one would go to the ground for the preamp board, and the other would go to the ground to the power amp. I would actually split this in three, and I would have an LED to come on too. But that's the way you're going to want to do this amp. If you insist on doing your 2050, I don't know why you would do that. I've used those. They don't work for bass. It's not strong enough. I've made those before, and they make fart sounds. So I'm sure you're going to come at me and you're going to say, well, you had already made up your mind that you want to use the wrong preamp and the wrong amp board, and you're going to disrespect the fact that I took like a half hour out of my unbelievably busy day off. My wife is sitting here with me. It's Easter Sunday, and I took a half hour. When did I start building Class D amp boards? It was when I left Infinity.
It was like 16 years ago or something.
I've been doing this for 16 years. Every year I rebuild all the equipment for the band, and there was 4 people in the band. So every year I was making 4 new amplifiers. Every year. And it's not just 4 a year. I'm doing amps. There's so many amps here. There's everywhere I look, there's amps. In the room that I'm in, there's probably 15 amps that I've built by hand. There's stereo amps, there's mono amps, and I'm telling you, dude, these JFET preamps are designed for your needs. Okay, and the thing about the 2050 is, it's not gonna cut it. It's not gonna cut it for what you need. Okay. Now, if you insist on being a weenie, if you insist on just, you could get one of these. What I do, I use automotive epoxy, which is something called JB Weld, and I will get a miniature heat sink and apply that to this. This is the chip. But this is pretty basic. It's got a mute switch, which, believe me, you would want to use that because it probably pops unbelievably loud when you turn it on. Here's the input. Here's the power connector, and here's your output. These are really tiny pads, though. That's what I don't like about this board. The pads are tiny, and if you use the proper thick ass wire, like what I'm saying is, this wire here, you get a dead computer power supply and cut this wire off and use the thickest wires that are in this. You use those thick wires when you run your power cords to this. When you make your battery pack, you use that wire. And then coming out of the speaker, you need to use to the jack, you need to use thick wire. Okay, pal? For your input here, you can use you can use shielded cable. Like, you could take an RCA cable and cut that, and you have it shielded. But that's my recommendation for you. I'm cynical if you'll even watch this, because every time I've ever dealt with people that's claimed they're going to make an amp, it hasn't. They don't take my advice, and I know you're just in love with the idea of this tiny little thing. Don't get this, dude. Honestly, even doing the Class D, there's something called a 3886. But yeah, that's what I'm recommending you do. And I mean, if you're gonna take the time to build it, why would you this is what you want to get, right? So go ahead and get that. You probably, this thing has probably kept you up at night lusting after it. Get this thing and make your fart box.